Hello my friends and welcome. As you know, my fellow staff members and I have been speaking this week on the topic of draw near. And so we are speaking of how we can take steps to constantly, on a heart level, draw nearer to God in our personal relationship with Him. Spiritually, we are connected. Spiritually, we are one. But it is something that we want to experience in our soul. It's something we want to experience in our emotions and the way we think. And that's why it's important that we actually take advice from the Bible on how we can actually draw nearer to God. So the first thing I want to say is that He's already drawn near to you. He's closer than the very skin on your bones. If you've given your heart to Jesus, the reality is that He lives in you. Simply what we are talking about is ways in which we can actually choose to acknowledge that reality. And one of the ways that we can do that is through fasting. Now, throughout the church history, there's a lot of different interpretations on what fasting really is. And so that's why it's important on any topic that we take the words straight from God's mouth Himself in terms of what He believes and what He says fasting truly is, and the kind of fasting that pleases Him. And so we find that in Matthew 6 verse 17 to 18, and Jesus says, "But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you." And so what Jesus is saying here is that fasting is not something to be seen by other people. It's not some kind of religious duty that we do that in any way is supposed to make us more appealing towards other people for our spirituality. It's actually something that is intimate and personal between us and God. Jesus says it's got nothing to do with other people. It is simply about your personal relationship with God. And so that's why He says, when you fast, still anoint your head with oil, still wash your face, still look, presentable. Don't look like you've spent days without eating. And no, it's simply about a heart decision that you've made with God. Now, fasting can be anything. Fasting can be making the decision to eat less junk food. Fasting can be making the decision to spend less time on social media. So why do we make these decisions? Well, we make these decisions to prioritize our personal relationship with God. What we are saying is, I'm going to choose to take a break from these pleasures of the world, and I'm going to choose to focus on the pleasure of enjoying my personal relationship with God. You see, what happens in that reality, what happens in that space, is that we are actually fine-tuning our ears to pick up more of what God's saying. It allows us to hear His still small voice a lot more clearer, with everything in the world being so noisy. It allows us to actually fellowship with God a lot clearer than we would if we were still caught up in all of those things. And so fasting is a decision between you and God ultimately. And that's why Jesus says it's private. It's something between you and God, and it's something that God sees, and that He will reward you openly for that decision, that He will reward you for putting Him first in your life. And so my encouragement to you is that fasting is good. Fasting is something that is personal between you and God. It's something that you and Him can talk about in terms of what it is that you choose to fast from. And I want to encourage you that one thing you can expect as a guarantee is that your relationship with God will continue to blossom in ways that you could never imagine. Always remember, you are highly favored and deeply loved of God.